Welcome to Surviving Saturday, a podcast about holding on to hope in the midst of life's difficulties, disappointments, and dark seasons.
Times like that remind us of the agony and despair the followers of Jesus felt on the Saturday of Easter weekend, in between the Friday on which he was crucified and the Sunday on which he rose from the dead.
That Sunday forever changed the way that humans can relate to God. But what does it look like to be honest about the very real pain we experience in the in-between?
To fervently cling to hope in the God who promised us his peace and his presence, at times when he feels distant or even cruel.
I'm Wendy Osborne, a licensed counselor in Charlotte, North Carolina.
And I'm her husband, Chris, a marriage mediator, conflict resolution coach, and trauma-informed storywork coach.
Join us each episode for authentic conversations about how life not turning out as we'd expected has created the contextual soil for the growth of a tenacious hope in the resurrection and in a God who is still making all things new. Hello, we are back.
Hey guys.
It is Wendy and Chris here. We have taken quite a long break from recording anything. Frankly, I was very tired.
And I was very busy is not even a word to describe it. I was inundated for a while and there wasn't much else happening bandwidth-wise other than work stuff and a little bit of family stuff.
We got our youngest graduated from college and out to California to live for a year. We are here with our cat Sage, who wants to give a shout out to vets everywhere that she does not like them. She likes nothing that they do. She was there the other night for a little sickness, and it was not a good experience for her.
She has been a study in short-term trauma recovery for the last couple days.
Yes.
Staying closer to your side than usual.
Yes, and she's here peacefully on the edge of my chair.
I think she's made her debut as a therapy cat too recently, hasn't she?
She has. She does a lot of co-counseling with me. She's now part of this pod squad. So, I want to open up our conversation here by a quote from Cole Arthur Riley, who has the book and the Instagram, I guess you call it a site, Black Liturgies, which is phenomenal. This is a quote from her book, This Here Flesh, and it is quoted in Chuck DeGroat's new book, Healing What's Within. So this is going to kick off our conversation.
Cool.
So Cole Arthur Riley in This Here Flesh. On the day the world began to die, she's considering Genesis 3. On the day the world began to die, God became a seamstress. This is the moment in the Bible that I wish we talked about more often. When Adam and Eve eat from the tree and decay and despair begin to creep in, when they learn to hide from their own bodies, when they learn to hide from each other, no one ever told me the story of a God who kneels and makes clothes out of animal skin for them. I remember many conversations about the doom and consequence imparted by God after humans ate from that tree. I learned of the curses too, and could maybe even recite them. But no one ever told me of the tenderness of this moment. When shame had replaced Eve's and Adam's dignity, God became a seamstress. He took the skin off his creation to make something that would allow humans to stand in the presence of their maker and one another again. So.
Wow, that is can I just react to that for a second? I mean, that's a really present and visceral sort of image. Mm-hmm. Even when you read it the second time there, you'd read it for me a minute ago, but he took the skin off of other animals to make covering for the humans. Mm-hmm. I hadn't even thought about the intimacy and the kind of, I don't know, the detail of that.
Yeah. It made me think of when I have had, on a few occasions, clothes made for me. So the biggest one was my wedding dress.
Yeah.
And it is a very intimate experience because the seamstress is very familiar with your body, but also with your likes and your style. And so they have to really know you to make something that is going to not just fit, but to suit you.
Well, that used to be more of a thing, like as you're describing that, I'm like thinking of when do men that I know, when have I ever had anybody make clothing for me? I mean, it's almost never, except for one time came to mind. It wasn't as intimate and it did require some measurements though. I had a law student actually who handmade me a bow tie.
Oh yes.
And they measured my neck, and so it didn't have any adjustability. It's not, it's just like, here, this is for you. It's made for you. And it was I think I got to choose a fabric or something, but I still treasure that thing.
Yeah.
Because it was, I want to know you, and I want to honor you and reflect. It's something of your character, but it's a gift they gave.
Yeah.
But really, men, to a large degree, are somewhat. We don't have that a lot. Even altering stuff, we'll just typically, most guys I know will go buy a new shirt or a new pair of pants before we'll have anything tailored or altered that much. But it used to be, I mean, at least for rich people, I guess back in the day, there were men's tailors, and there was that.
And I think there are still some, but maybe a different echelon.
Not the circles I run in.
So I wanted to ask you, where in life have you felt maybe the equivalent tenderness of God?
Ooh, yeah, that's a live topic for me, because I feel like I've been on this journey of learning to experience the tenderness of God in a different way, in a more embodied fashion. I would say I've had tons of head knowledge. I've had lots of wonderful people who have taught me about the grace and mercy of God and said God is for you and God loves you, and have really tried to emphasize that. But it's different when you kind of experience it. I didn't for a long time have that many visceral or embodied, I would say, experiences of God's kindness. So I would say in recent times, that's what comes to mind, a couple things. One recently that I was telling you about when we were going on a walk, but I recently went to a men's retreat with our church, and I've done those lots, and I love men's retreats a lot because there's time to get away with other guys, but there's time, at least in the ones I've gone to, where and they did it this time. We actually had to change plans. Our men's retreat was supposed to be in the mountains of North Carolina. We couldn't go because of the hurricane, so we decided to do something in our town of Charlotte and stick around the church. Which everybody's kind of a little bit bummed about. And I was really bummed because it's like, I'm not going to have that outside time in nature. But anyway, we had a point in the retreat where it's go and spend time with God and just, notice what you feel and let him be present. And we're kind of instructions. And I knew I needed that. I knew I was overdue for that. And I mean, I walked off sort of the campus where we were. I knew I had to get somewhere away from people, and I started feeling already like I felt stuff welling up. I started just feeling sadness and some anger and some frustration and all, and it was noticeable to me how, gosh, those are right below the surface. Those are like, it didn't take a few minutes, like where it's like, oh, we're finally gonna talk, and I felt God inviting, because the speaker had said, but also I knew, like, well, I haven't done this in a while, but I felt God inviting me to be present.
Now, I'm curious about, you said, you made the comment, oh, we're finally going to talk. I'm assuming that was God.
Yeah.
And what was the tone of that question?
It was an inviting tone.
Okay.
It was I felt release in my body. It was not dreaded, and it wasn't, and I'm kind of sensitive about these things too, because after I've had intimate experiences talking with God or experiencing God, but I'm very wary of either manufacturing that or trying to, I know I've tried to manufacture that again, and you can't really. There's some way, God tends to surprise, at least for me. Routine has never been really good, or it's not been something I've been drawn to, and so every day I sit and read my Bible or this or that. My brain just doesn't work that way. I haven't experienced God that way, or maybe I'm too afraid I'll be disappointed. Whereas in this, it's that time, we've been building towards this, I'm ready, and my heart is kind of full. And I kind of just was just trying to be receptive. And I kind of followed what this speaker had said, but I really didn't, because I'm like, I know God and I need to talk. And it's been at least a month or two since we've had just sustained time. And I have good experiences when I do, but I realized I have this gap or difficulty, and this is something I think the speaker talked about. We talk about how we interact with God as Father is impacted by our relationship with our earthly fathers. And I think he had said something about, he had done a couple great things. Both, do you understand that Jesus experienced God as a father who delighted in him? Like he pointed out the times when a voice came audibly from heaven, what it said was, "This is my son with whom I am well pleased. This is my beloved son. This is who I delight in. Listen to him." And if you think about it, like, that's like the only times in the Gospels where God is like, "Hey guys, I want you to get something," and it's, "I delight in this." And what that hit for me is I have such an absence of fatherly delight. My father, I'd have no memories of his face delighting in me and just going, "I'm so glad you're here."
I'm even thinking, just in life, it seems hard for humans to delight in one another. I think we delight in celebrities and when someone is announced at a concert or something, but it seems very hard for we humans to share glory that way.
Yeah, and to just be overcome with, when you think of like just overcome with, oh my gosh, this. In fact, we're a little bit, if somebody is showing too much delight in their favorite singer or speaker, author, or whatever, and it gets to, like, we use the phrase fangirling. There's not really, I guess there's a fanboying, I guess you can be, but it's almost derogatory. It's like, oh, you got too much energy. You just love that too much. We have sort of a uncomfortableness with too much love, but
I don't think my love for Taylor Swift is too much.
No,
but,
no. But for parents, like a guy on this retreat was telling a story about something that his son wanted. They had taken their family to Disney, and there was a certain shirt in a certain size, and they didn't have it. And then they were looking in the back, the old, let's look in the back and see if we have it. And the person's like, "We usually don't have anything in the back." But then they found it. And this guy was talking about seeing his, like, 3 or 4-year-old son just enraptured, like, "Oh, they have it," and just that delight. And then he was talking about that delight and capturing that delight there, that he wanted to freeze the moment, like, and it was a worldly thing and all, sure, but just the essence of delight was just so good.
Well, it's not that different from what I read from Cole Arthur Riley, like the clothing. God's becoming a seamstress. There's a sweetness in this father procuring this shirt that brings his little boy such delight.
Yes. And so that's what I was sort of wrestling with. I was realizing, and partly it was the timing and the location, but I went walking. Our church is on Wilkinson Boulevard, and I went walking down past the site of the old law school here in town where I used to teach. And I was remembering, man, when I went in there, I felt special. And that thought just sort of came to me. I'm going to walk down there because there's Bryant Park nearby, has a bunch of stone architecture, and it's kind of a cool outdoor place to be. And that's sort of where I was heading, but I knew I'd walk past that building. But I remember the feeling of, I felt special when I walked in there. And then, that job ended, that time in life ended. But I was reckoning with it. What it all brought together was how hard it is for me to just sit and rest in the delight of God. I realized that I'm more than I would want to admit. I am always trying to do something to make people see that I'm special. You really have to know that I'm special, see that I'm special, and I'll be subtle about it.
To get the delight?
Yes. I realized I'm so desperate for that delight that I'm trying to pull it out of people sometimes. Like, I can't just say, "Oh, I'm a family lawyer." I'm like, I'm a special kind of family lawyer. I'm a collaborative lawyer. I'm a mediator. I'm not just a lawyer. I've been a law professor. And I was really wrestling with, I have so much identity wrapped up in vocation. Even as I pursue counseling, I'm like, counselors are really special. I'll be really special then. It is so insidious. But I was recognizing, so the speaker said, pay attention to, and if any song lyrics or anything pop into your mind or whatever comes when you're sitting and just presenting yourself to Jesus, just pay attention to that.
And something that jumped into my head was there's a singer named John Bellion. He's got a song called Stupid Deep. And the song, the lyrics say, what if who I long to be was always me? What if the love I fought to feel was always free? What if all the things I've done are just attempts at earning love? Because the hole inside my heart is stupid deep. And I was just like kind of undone by that. Like, oh, I don't want that to be true about me, but it really is. And I have such a dearth of just that fatherly delight that you were asking me good questions about, and we can talk about other times when I've experienced something of it. But at that point, I was just wrestling with, I want to just sit, and I want to trust that God has that intimacy for me. Like if he saw me naked and ashamed, like, hey, I'll sew some clothes together for you, or I will cover you in the way you need to be covered.
Right.
And there's times I've experienced that, but here I was just wrestling with, I don't make space for this enough. And some of it I think is, because I'm like, why don't I make time to actually connect with God on this level every day? Why does it take being away and somebody saying it's now your time to go and spend time with God? And I think that's part of it. I'm afraid to approach because I'm afraid it's not going to be there.
What do you think you're afraid won't be there?
The delight. I think I'm afraid the delight won't be there. I don't know if I can trust it. And here's the other thing I kind of landed on too. I have a deep core also fear of nobody can handle all that's in me. If I let my raw, unadulterated emotion and feelings out, nobody's going to stick around. Nobody wants to see all that. It's too much for people.
And when you say raw, unadulterated emotions, are you meaning like grief? Yes.
I'm thinking like deep feelings of grief that I've been exploring probably over the last 3 or 4 years through various, training at the Allender Center and Recovery Week and things like that, where I have experienced healing by just the raw young me getting to express what it was like to be in my house growing up, and where there were people who invited that, and they really didn't want all the words and all the flourishes and all the things that I would use to sort of keep people. Even though I think, it's making you think I'm special, it's also keeping you at a distance. I'm not knowable if I'm sort of this illusory sort of thing or this wonderful thing. They wanted to know the real me, and they wanted to make space for the younger part of me to just say, this is what it was like to be in my house. And then they kind of poked and invited and drew it out, and then it kind of came out, and there was deep feelings of grief and rage and hurt and fear that I hadn't named, and that I certainly hadn't let myself experience, and I'll just kind of literally let it out.
And do you think those feelings are around this reality that we are created for delight? I mean, that feels like that's taking it head direction even for me. Like, okay. This is me trying to learn. I'm meaning the emotions that were coming up.
Yeah, I think
and
the emotion,
that little you that didn't have them,
that didn't have delight, and that had a lot of desperate fear, and that was trying to be so damn grown up, and had to be so damn grown up.
Yeah.
And so I think I learned to be very self-contained, and to hold it together, because there was nobody I could just fall apart with. And in my home growing up, I couldn't just let it all out, rage. And somebody say, hey, I got you. And just this picture of, somebody enveloping you and, hey, take all your rage out of me. Feel what you feel. It's okay. I'm here for you. I just don't have that. I have my dad who is absent and only connected through all this conflict and all this. And my mom was nurturing and brought kindness, but there was a consumptive aspect to it. I had to support her and keep her alive. And literally, I felt like at times I was keeping her alive.
Well, she had a lot of health issues, right?
Health issues plus the violence between them, and I was sort of restorative, was part of a role I played. So
there was no room for you?
No, there was no room for me, and there was no room. I had a chance briefly this summer in one of my counseling training programs to do kind of a psychodrama program, or a professor kind of walked us through this, but used me as sort of the guinea pig, and gave me a chance to have like a conversation with my young self with my young sister. And somebody sort of played the role of my sister, And the best thing about that whole thing was we decentered my parents. Like somebody sort of, in psychodrama, somebody sort of stands in the place of other important people in your life. We put my mom and dad kind of over here having an argument, but then they were off, almost off stage, while my sister and I became the center focus.
Yeah.
And it was just like, even that was powerful to recognize how their conflict and the way they conducted themselves and how they managed all their pain and trauma, how that sucked all the energy, all the oxygen.
The home was conflict centric.
Yes, it was conflict centric.
Rather than adults dealing with the adult things, they needed you to be in the middle of it. Yes.
And so that's been part of my healing journey, is to experience the kindness of God, to go into moments where where I wasn't even thinking about, is God here? Now, I don't know. I'm just trying to survive. I'm just trying to live through what they're bringing and endure it. But to go back and to tend, it sounds wacky sometimes, but to tend to those younger parts of myself where those memories are, those are in me.
Well, yeah, because like you said, they come out now saying, "Do you see me? Do you see me?"
Yes.
Yeah.
And they also
have them.
And they also come out in like the unhealthy sort of pursuit of hey, can I be center stage? It helped me kind of understand why. I mean, I was in second grade when I got my first lead in a play, and I was one of the two people who got to play Santa Claus in a Christmas play in like second grade, and the stage became a place for me where like, oh, you're going to see me now. Watch, I sing, I dance, I will get your delight.
Yeah.
And I know I've read about and know the stories of a lot of famous comedians and actors and stuff who talk about that as well. A lot of them have very troubled childhoods as well.
Yeah.
Chris Parnell from Saturday Night Live has written about it, or Daryl Hammond one, I forget which one, but they've written about, oh my gosh, yeah, how did I learn to do voices? Because I entertained my mom for years. Dan talks about that as well. He was the entertainer at his family stories. So I'm recognizing that, and I'm like trying to live differently. Like, I don't want to have to dazzle, to have to say, look at me, I'm special. I want to just live into who am I, and let God remind me of that. And so this tender moment with him on this retreat was, as I've experienced him in other times too, he's like, bring what you got. I don't care what you bring. Yeah, you're mad, you're upset, you're frustrated. I got you.
So how do you think you got to the place where you could trust him with all that's in you just a few weeks ago, when that is not the fathering that you knew in this earthly life?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. In that immediate moment, one of the things that helped was the speaker had played a clip from a TV show I haven't heard of, called Open Range or Outer Range, something like that. And he played this scene where Josh Brolin, the actor, is playing a man who's very grizzled and doesn't have a life of faith or whatever, but at dinner one night, he asks if he can pray, and the whole family looks and goes, oh my God, yeah, sure, what's going to happen? And he brings a prayer that is just like authentic and real and raw, and it's like, yeah, God, I'm going to talk to you, but there's this big gulf between us, and where the hell are you? And this is like, he's saying grace, like the chicken's just sitting on the table, and he is just like all of a sudden raw, emoting with God. So that
he's showing up naked.
Yes. And so there's that invitation, and I would say it's places where somebody who's a very wise, kind caregiver has invited me to bring the real. And they kind of, with me, they have to kind of say, can you stop the tap dancing or the wonderful words and the, you've got this all figured out shit, because really I'm interested in knowing the you that's behind that. And so when somebody kind of pursues and has invited that, and then I'll be like, okay, well, I'll show you a little, and I reveal something, and they can handle it. And they're not like, they don't run away, and they're not like, oh, well, that is bad, never mind, don't tell me that.
What do you think has given them that strength? How can they, when maybe others haven't done that?
I think everybody I can think of, it's somebody who's done their own work. They've been on their own healing journey, and they're really connected to that. So I'm thinking of a counselor named John. I'm thinking of Tom in NFTC 1 with
with a small group leader there, where they basically just said, can we have, what are you really feeling? If I were in that position of this story you just told about your house growing up, I would feel this, or I might feel that. They don't presume. I have a real sensitivity to if somebody tells me what to feel, I react very strongly, as you've seen. But if somebody invites me to name what I actually feel and pokes around it, but they show that they want that, then I, give a little bit more. I allow a little bit more to come out. And when they can handle it and they're like, we're here, I'm still here, I love you more now than I did before. They really said things like that, like, that real self that you just brought is beautiful. And I'm like, really? I'm like, it's foreign, but also meets a deep-seated ache that I know is there.
So I think what you're saying is when you're in the presence of someone who is convinced of God's tenderness and delight toward them.
Yes.
They can hold whatever you bring because they've been naked before him.
Yes. That's a good way to capture it, because the fake of it, the sort of somebody's trying to be really caring and being really pursuing, but there's a sort of inauthenticity you can kind of pick up
on.
It
could be scrambling, like you're saying, look how good.
Yeah, and
Do you like me now?
Yeah, and I'm trying to pay attention to that dynamic in myself as well. When I'm getting to know somebody and I'm asking curiosity questions and I'm saying, really, you can share the real with me. I want your real self. Is that for real? Mm-hmm. Am I really operating out of that because I know I'm loved and I'm solid? Or am I thinking, if I ask real good questions and I'm really listening and I'm really kind, will you think I'm really special because of that? Uh-huh. I'm really, really aware of that dynamic.
It's so insidious, right?
It is.
We're all doing it in some way.
Yes, that's what I've loved about some of the training that I've done is people are normalizing, let's catch each other doing that. Like, hey, I felt like you were authentic and real and there, and then somehow it went a different direction. What happened at this moment? I didn't believe it as much, or it didn't feel like you were as present or there. And so I would say, kind of back to your original question, I've experienced the tenderness of God both in being alone with him and finding that he can hear whatever. And he's never said, whatever feeling I've opened up or allowed to come out. He never says, can you shut that down? I don't want that. That's not what I meant. You're supposed to just praise me, Mm-hmm. I don't get that. I get that. He's like, the Bible has Psalm 73 for a reason. And some of the imprecatory Psalms, I don't understand. Mm-hmm. Where are you? Why are you doing like Josh Brolin's prayer in the Open Range show? I can handle I'm glad you're dialed in and we are having this conversation. Mm-hmm. And I know that enough. I just have to, it feels like I have to remind myself, like, oh, I can actually be honest about the things where I'm grateful for what God's doing and I can see his work and I'm blessed by it. And there are other places where I still have this big hurt and disappointment. There are these things that I thought were supposed to be a certain way or happen a certain way and they haven't happened.
Yeah.
And those hurt. And I'm hurting in it.
Uh-huh.
And God's like, I get it. And I've got this sense of wait a minute, nobody could see when I was 23 or 25 or whatever, nobody could see what was going to happen for the rest of my life. So if I'm looking at people I know and care about who are 23, 25, 30, heck, 40, whatever, I don't know the whole story either.
Yeah.
But there are times that God feels absent, but he's not necessarily. He's just not acting right then. He's lying in wait, whatever. So I would say experiencing God alone has been necessary. Being comfortable with silence, being comfortable just, hey, we're just going to hang out, Mm-hmm. I'm learning to sort of lean into that, and I find myself wanting to make more space for that. And the other place is just in community, like you were talking about with those, kind of wise, kind people. For me, a big ingredient is I think I'm finding myself more drawn to places where we do cut the bullshit or there's no room for bullshit. Uh-huh. Like nobody's posturing. Nobody's like, hey, check me out. Look at me. Mm-hmm. I love communities where everybody's sort of honest from the start with. Like, and this is one last thing I'll say on that. I know we're getting kind of near the end of the episode, but I, for my counseling training recently, was required to go to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting mm-hmm. and a Narcotics Anonymous meeting and an Al-Anon meeting. Mm-hmm. And in every one, I have been to some things that are similar to that, but I felt
a kindred spirit. I felt a little bit at home, and I respected the heck out of the people because they were naming truth. And they're naming truth in their own lives, and nobody's trying to judge each other, fix each other. They're pretty strict about no crosstalk. When somebody shares, you don't tell them the great book that they should read, and you don't tell them, well, you should talk to my guy about this. You just let them have space to feel what they're feeling, and particularly the Al-Anon. My feeling after leaving that was like, I probably should have been to more of these. These are helpful. People are trying to figure out where do my feelings start and end, and somebody else's start and end.
I feel like we could all benefit from 12-step meetings.
Yeah. And
yes,
so
every single one of us, if there's an active addiction of a substance or a process or not, we're all scrambling.
Well, and on that
find
note,
what would make us loved.
Yes, as we end, I'm going to put a plug in for something that's near and dear to my heart. But some of your listeners will be familiar with the Samson Society, which is trying to be basically a group for men who want authentic connection and who want to actually be talking about the real stuff, who want no pretension and no Christian shiny it up, but basically real, raw, authentic community where there is sort of a 12-step-ish kind of format. But it's not just for certain kinds of recovery, anything like that. It's just basically authentic manhood, another enterprise or another format. I've been to their national meeting a couple times. They've had Jay Stringer come and speak. They've had Adam Young come and speak. Andrew Ballman's coming up. But there are a couple of us who've gotten together and we said, look, we're going to start a Charlotte chapter. There used to be a Charlotte chapter. I think it even met at Hope. But there is one now getting started. It's going to be on Wednesday nights at a place in Matthews called the Collective Community or Collective Cafe. So if anybody wants information about that, they can email me at chris@nurturecounseling.net. But authentic community is I think a great place where the tenderness of Jesus can show up. And in brothers and sisters. So we'll have a part 2 of this episode where we're going to let Wendy share some about where she has experienced the kindness and tenderness of God as well. So join us for that. And otherwise, we'll see you next time on the Surviving Saturday podcast. The Surviving Saturday podcast is brought to you by Nurture Counseling PLLC, a counseling, teaching, and training center based out of Charlotte, North Carolina. We help families flourish one story at a time. Nurture Counseling provides counseling intensive for couples, conflict resolution coaching, story work groups, seminars, workshops, and retreats to provide a safe and welcoming context for exploring the agonizing experiences of pain, brokenness, and evil that disrupt our lives, and that God often uses to nurture deeper trust and intimacy with Him and with each other. You can find us online at www.nurturecounseling.net.